While Mongolia isn't usually the first place that comes to mind when people think about global investing, the country is actually developing into a fascinating frontier market. The country is home to 3.5 million and the economy is powered by copper, coal, and gold, although it is expanding more into renewable energy, agriculture, and uranium. In this video, we'll look at Mongolia and explore the different ways foreign investors can gain exposure to this unique, high-risk, high-reward market. Mongolia is a high-growth frontier market. The Asian Development Bank forecasts around 6.6% GDP growth in 2025. Mongolia is home to a young, urbanizing, and digitally modernizing society. Around 70% of the population live in urban areas, and around 85% have online access, with e-services now reaching many nomadic communities via the eMongolia platform. This shift indicates that Mongolia is transforming faster than GDP figures alone can show. Mongolia is also laying the institutional and energy policy foundation for a greener and more diversified economy. In 2024, the government launched the Chinggis Fund, a sovereign wealth fund that takes money from mining and channels it into long-term savings, development projects, and even direct payouts to citizens. In short, Mongolia blends youth-driven tech, resource-led growth, and institutional groundwork for future diversification, a somewhat rare combination in frontier markets. The first way to invest in Mongolia is by doing so directly on the Mongolian Stock Exchange. This can be done entirely from outside of Mongolia. To invest in the Mongolian stock market, foreign investors need to set up a central securities depository account, register with a licensed broker, and open up a clearing account with a local bank like Bank or TDB. Once that's completed, you can trade local companies and government bonds. This gives you the purest exposure to Mongolia's domestic economy, but keep in mind that liquidity can be thin and you're exposed to swings in the Mongolian tugrik. A second way to invest in Mongolia is by buying foreign companies that operate in Mongolia but are listed on overseas exchanges. Major brokers like Fidelity or Interactive Brokers often provide access to such companies. Companies like Step Gold, Erdene Resource Development, Mongolian Mining Corporation, Aspire Mining Limited, and Petrometad are all available on many international platforms. These companies raise capital and trade abroad, but their projects and revenues are tied directly to Mongolia. This structure makes it easier for foreign investors since you can buy and trade them through regular brokerage accounts just like any other stock. But there are some important risks to consider. Most of these firms are small, single project developers, so their outcomes are often contingent on one minor field. They're often micro-cap stocks with low liquidity, meaning prices can swing wildly and raising new capital may lead to share dilution. On top of that, they're highly sensitive to commodity cycles and vulnerable to policy changes inside Mongolia. It is also possible to invest in Mongolia through proxy companies. These are large international firms that operate in Mongolia but also operate in other countries. While there are several proxy companies, the most accessible one is probably Rio Tinto, which operates the giant Oyu Tolgoi copper and gold mine. Proxy companies are global corporations with diverse portfolios. That means they offer more liquidity and stability and generally carry less political risk than a Mongolia-only company. The trade-off is that Mongolia is usually just a small piece of their overall business. Even if a Mongolian project performs well, the stock may not move much if global commodity prices fall or other parts of the company stumble. In short, proxies give you a safer, steadier way to gain access to Mongolia, but the link to Mongolia's fortunes is naturally diluted. There are other ways to invest in Mongolia, but these come with their own risks and difficulties. There is a startup scene in Mongolia. Mongolia has a small but growing tech and fintech scene in Ulaanbaatar. But as a foreigner, investing directly is difficult. You'd usually need to come in as an angel investor through a venture fund or local accelerators. These are very high risk and illiquid. Accessing Mongolia through ETFs is also challenging. There are no Mongolia-specific ETFs like India, Vietnam, or China. Some broad frontier and emerging market ETFs may include Mongolia, but the weighting is usually tiny, too small to provide a meaningful exposure. Finally, foreigners can't own land in Mongolia outright, but they could buy apartments and condos in Ulaanbaatar. Rental yields can be decent and the city is growing fast. However, you'll likely need to pay in cash, resale can be slow, and returns are highly contingent on mining cycles and the tugrik's value. Real estate is possible, but it may not be the most liquid or straightforward option. Mongolia is a frontier market with big potential. The economy is young, resource-rich, and laying the groundwork for diversification into areas like renewables and tech. For investors, there are a few ways to get exposure to the Mongolian market. from stocks on the Mongolian exchange to foreign companies running projects in the country and larger international firms operating in Mongolia. But it's important to remember that this is still a high-risk market. There can be liquidity difficulties, the turgor can be volatile, and policy shifts can change market conditions quickly. While Mongolia's story is compelling, it should be approached with caution, patience, and a long-term view. If you found this video informative, please check out our content on Vina Edge. This presentation is for informational purposes only, and this is not investment advice.